Good morning, everyone. We're going to talk about compliance. It's not a very nice topic, but then we'll try and unpack all the issues around compliance and the practical and legal compliance guidelines that we're going to provide this morning. The context around this is that compliance is just one of those things that you need to deal with. It's not nice, sometimes it costs money, but then increasingly when we do due diligence on businesses that are hoping to raise financing, the issues that we have identified, we're going to discuss some of them this morning. So we're going to start with corporate governance, tax, and the regulatory framework for SMEs in Ghana. So why do we talk about compliance? Why is it important? It's important because it'll protect your business from legal risks and penalties. It'll also help you to get access to incentives and also contracts. Everybody knows if you are bidding for a contract, you have to take your tax clearance certificates and your company registration documents, right? Yeah. So compliance helps you gives you credibility for you to be able to go for some contracts. Also, in the long term, it helps to promote sustainability and growth. And if we look on the investor side, the trust that you will get from potential investors and financiers is immeasurable. Because then if you're not trusted by the investor, it's unlikely that they'll feel comfortable to invest in you. Of course, also disputes and penalties. Now, even ORC is penalizing for not filing annual returns. So we are in a regime where revenue is being made from penalties, so we need to be careful. And overall, just to build investor confidence and also help you to grow, attract opportunities that will help you to grow. So that's why legal compliance matters, even though it's a very painful exercise. Okay, let's go through some of the key legal requirements. This is not exhaustive because you see that under the sectoral regulatory licenses, you may have some licenses that are not there. But let's look at first the basic one, Office of Registrar of Companies. You have to register your business, you have to file your annual returns, and you have to file when you change directors, even when you change auditors. And your address, you have to file that there at the Registrar General's. A business is required to have a company secretary. Most times the company secretary would be in charge of making sure that these filings are done. But of course, it's the business owner's responsibility as a matter of risk to make sure that everybody is working right to have these filings done. Then GRA, that's the elephant in the area. GRA, we need to make sure obtaining a TIN, every company will get a TIN when they register. It's almost automatic. But then tax registration, a company needs to make sure that they get registered at GRA for tax. And then there is the monthly filings for PAYE, which is the what you pay for employees, PAYE, pay as you earn tax, withholding tax, and VAT if you are in the service industry. But you need to register with GRA before you have access to. Now they have an online portal. Once you register, you get access to the online portal and you can file your monthly filings. There's also the annual corporate income tax filings, which have to be done at the end of each, actually it's for the financial year, but you file it from March, and you can get an extension up to April, even sometimes June. But yeah, there's also pensions, and I think sometimes we forget that it's mandatory to file for Tier 1 and Tier 2 for your employees. Every month you need to deduct the deductions from the employee salary and top up with the employer's contribution and file monthly at SNIT, and then also you need to get a corporate trustee and then file also with the tier 2. Tier 3 is optional, but then tier 1 and 2 are compulsory. And now I've noticed that SNIT does an audit and then comes to check your PAYE filings and cross-checks it with their filings. So if you have 20 employees and you are doing PAYE for 20, but you are doing SNIT for 15, they will catch you. And let's note that SNIT, if you don't comply with SNIT, the directors face criminal sanctions. So the Saturday court, which is a SNIT court, and directors can be dragged to SNIT court for criminal sanctions. Then there's a sector-specific regulatory licenses, and that depends on the business that you're doing. Not every business has other license provisions apart from the general ones. So there's EPA if you're dealing with waste and environmental stuff, then there's the FDA, and then the Ghana Standard Authority. If it's pharmaceutical, maybe pharmaceutical board. So you have to know the sector-specific license, especially if you are manufacturing or selling consumer products, because that certification is what will give you the authority to go out and sell your products to the general public. All right. These are just some of the essentials, housekeeping matters regarding corporate governance that we need to keep an eye on. And for most businesses, there will be somebody who does that. You'll hire somebody who would keep an eye on it. But then you also need to have that broad view of what needs to be done so that you can make sure everybody does what they need to do. So there's the record keeping. Companies need to make sure that their record keeping is correct. So you may have an accountant who would help with that, but you need to make sure that they know what you are doing. You know what they are doing and that they are keeping proper accounts. Ideally, there should be management accounts that are reviewed at the end of each quarter. And that gives you an idea of where they are putting all the information and how they are categorizing the information. We've had instances where at AGM, suddenly we noticed that the allocation of money was not even done properly, and the accounts have been signed off, possibly even filed at GRA. So we need to keep an eye on this. It's a sign that your business is operating effectively, and also when there are mistakes in your accounting, it can foster some distrust among your investors if they see that your numbers are not adding up. And then you have to speak so much about it and make so many excuses to be able to. And it's not good enough to say my accountant did it, because you own the accounts. In fact, directors own the accounts. When they say audited financial statements, it's the report of the directors, and that's why it's preceded by the report of the director to say this is a true and fair representation of the company's business. So let's keep an eye on it. Let's not leave it for the accountants. Very important is structure. There have to be defined roles. In most cases, directors are the same as the shareholders or their relatives of, and there's all these related parties, especially for smaller business. It's understandable. There's nothing wrong with that. But then we need to be very clear in what capacity everybody's taking decisions. We've seen companies, very big companies, where decisions are taken at the dining table because daddy is the chairman of the board, son is the director, wife is the chief operating officer. But we need to decide what role they play. If shareholders don't participate in the management of the company generally, so shareholders are the ones that fund the business, and the directors are responsible for the day-to-day running of the business. Now, the Companies Act puts a lot of responsibility on shadow directors, people who are not directors but who put their mouth inside the company's business. They are subject to the same liabilities and responsibilities as the directors. So we need to be careful that everybody knows their responsibilities. It also helps with accountability because you don't want decisions to be taken by shareholders And then when there's an issue and the directors are confronted, they said, oh, we didn't know about it. Our shareholders are the ones that took those decisions. And at that point, you realize that even though somebody else took the decision, you're being held liable for it because it was your decision to make to start with. So we need to be very clear what role everybody is playing and make sure that the roles are clearly defined and that everybody stays within there. Also, internal policies, they are very annoying. Trust me, strategy, this, conflict of interest policy, all those things are annoying, I must admit. And most times you'll need professional help to put them together. But trust me, it really helps to direct the operations of a company. So it helps to make sure that everybody's work is regulated and that the rules are set and the ground rules are there for everybody, particularly with staff and workers that we work with. Because even on labor issues, if you say somebody breached something, you need to assign it to a policy, and they need to have known about the policy before you can hold them accountable for it. So much as these policies can be a bit annoying because they sort of put you in a box, but they also discipline everybody, not just management, but everybody in the company knows that they are playing according to these rules. And therefore, internal policies are very, very important, no matter how small we are. And they don't have to be so wordy or they don't have to be thick documents. They could be just small, short rules on how we want to deal with certain matters. How are checks going to be signed, delivered? How is money going to be accounted for? And all those little things. And everybody will have to, every business will have to figure out what areas that they really need to regulate with the internal policies. And fortunately, there's no law that says how policies should be. So there's the flexibility to design your own corporate policies around your business. Compliance review. This is really like a health check that a business should do every now and then. I mean, you need to regularly, at least once a year, review how you are doing on your compliance. And then you need to, if there are any gaps, then you can work on it as a business. And so this helps you to be proactive. You don't wait for regulatory sanctions. You don't wait for an investor to do due diligence and say your business is good, your business model, your business makes sense, it has potential, but it looks like you're not focusing on compliance. And sometimes, yes, you're busy pushing for the business, you're looking for customers, you're looking for clients, you're putting stretch. It can be difficult to remember to keep an eye on compliance. But then at least once a year, you sit and you take stock. And then you can do some housekeeping before your house matters start getting too dirty. So let's look at governance. So we have ESG and there's governance in there, right? I always thought governance was about environment because it was in the word ESG. I was like, is it environment? But yeah, governance is how decisions are made, controlled, and then also reported. So with your financials, how you take your decisions around it, how you have controls in place, how you report it, that is what governance is about. And then also there are the core principles that underlie governance, and that is accountability, transparency, fairness, and responsibility. And they are virtuous things. I mean, nobody would be able to give you a manual on accountability, transparency, fairness, and responsibility. But we all need to hold ourselves as business owners accountable to these principles. Because ultimately, it benefits the business if we do. Now, if we're going to build a strong governance framework or a healthy governance framework, as we discussed, there needs to be clear structure. Structure means having that distinction we spoke about. The shareholders, the directors, managers, nobody goes to go and usurp the other's role. And then also the directors. And a lot of us put people's names on as directors, and they don't even know why they are there as directors or what role they play. So it'll be good to clearly identify the roles and responsibilities of directors. And if possible, give some small training just to explain to them what you expect from them as directors of your business. Also, regular board meetings. Board meetings are how directors are able to exercise oversight. So there may be a managing director who's the one in charge of the day-to-day administration, but they have to be accountable to the board, which means that if you don't have board meetings, then the MD is really just operating on their own. And that's very dangerous, because when issues arise, then you realize that you have given too much. So board meetings are a way to put in place oversight mechanisms for the company and also the management. The Companies Act recommends 2 board meetings in a year. That's not too difficult. Half year and end of the year. But then good corporate governance practices requires 4 times a year. Why? Because we talked about management accounts, and management accounts are usually quarterly. You break them up into 4 chunks: Q1, Q2, Q3. If the board is going to exercise proper oversight, they should be able to look at the management accounts at the end of each quarter. Now, it tells them where the business has been in the quarter, but it also helps them to fix anything that is wrong in the business early enough before you get to, say, the end of the year. And then you see there's so many irregularities, so many things going on, and then it's too late to fix it. So having 4 board meetings gives the directors the opportunity to review the company's books, get a report on how the company is functioning, at least at the end of each quarter, so that they can make the necessary interventions to make sure that the business continues to be healthy through the year. And then also maintaining accurate company records and filings. I think we spoke about it when we were talking about the regulatory requirements. We need to make sure that the company records, it's not enough to just have records, but they need to be accurate. They need to be accurate because it helps with the credibility of the business. It helps with building the trust and even reputation. If word goes around that your business presents documents that are not accurate to even bankers and to financiers, it's not a very good, and word goes around in the investor community very quickly. So we need to make sure that our company records are accurate and that they reflect, they give a fair and accurate view of your business. And then we talked about internal policies to make sure that not all the policies, not every policy listed here matters for every business. As I said, depending on the business, you may need to have conflict of interest policies where you have people who are performing dual roles or are providing services to the business, and you need to decide where their interest ends and where the business interest ends, and how to deal with a situation where they are torn between their interest and the business's interest. Directors are automatically bound by a conflict of interest duty, but then all other people in the business also who are not automatically bound will only be bound if there are internal policies in place. So as the business grows, we should look at these tools and these requirements so that we can have a healthy corporate governance framework for our businesses. And of course, filing annual returns with the ORC. Every time I do business, I do due diligence on a business and I ask, have you filed your annual returns? Like, oh, I filed a GRA. No, that's not the one we're talking about. The Companies Act requires that at least once a year you file your annual returns. Now, ORC have by their own self set a deadline for, I think, 30th June, and they charge you a penalty of 1,000 cedis if you file after that time. Now, if your business is a small business and you keep accruing 1,000 cedis on just annual returns, you can imagine how it hits you. And it's a very, very, very simple process. It's not even anything that you need experts to help you with. So let's keep an eye on these compliance requirements so that we can have a healthy corporate governance framework. Okay, labor and employment compliance. This is also another important aspect of a business, because most businesses will hire people, right? Even if you have a very small staff strength. So we need to keep an eye on the staff issues so that we can make sure that our staff are happy, they work in an environment where they can thrive, right? So we need to make sure that we have written contracts. I think the Labor Act says after 6 months, by 6 months you should have, you have 6 months to have a contract with your employees. And you need to be clear what everybody is doing, what role they are playing in the contract, as well as their remuneration and any benefits that you give to them. One thing that we also need to keep an eye on is seasonal employees and casual employees. It's a very dangerous way that we want to have temporary. It's like wanting to have temps, but then we don't want to have a fixed term contract with them, and we want to just use them for a little bit and we want to be able to dispose of them and then pick them up again. And we need to be very careful. If we're employing casual contracts, the law says you can only do that for 6 months at a time. And if you keep somebody on a 6 month rotation, that's against the law and they will be viewed as permanent employees. And a company that had used a casual, it's a big one too, they use a casual employees, a lot of them. Say about 50 of them they were using for years, 6 years. And the matter went to Labour Commission and said, you know, they are permanent employees and you have to go and give them all the benefits of the permanent employees, backdated to 6 years. They were very, very happy. I don't think the business owners were happy though. And we also have to look at our social security, pensions, and obligations towards them. We talked about the pension filing. The pension filing involves the employee's deduction and the employer's top up. So the employer has a responsibility on pensions to top up the deduction from the employee and pay it to the rate. It's the employer's obligation to file at SMEs. So we can't say we're adding the money to their money and they should file their own SMEs. That's not possible. Employees can't file their own SMEs. Neither can they file their own PUI. So it's the employer's duty to do that. Also, safety. Most businesses will have some safety requirement for their business. If we're sewing, we're cooking, we're manufacturing, we need to look at safety because the safety of the employees and everybody that comes there means that they can continue to work and we can continue to deliver revenue, right? So even though safety can be overlooked, we need to make sure, legally we're required to make sure that everybody that works is safe. And so it is the employer's obligation to ensure safety. Not just a gift that we're giving to our employers, but safety is it's a legal requirement for employees to comply with. And leave is not also an optional gift or benefits that you give. The law requires that you must give your employees leave. Now, leave includes maternity leave, and I see that it's a struggle sometimes for employers to justify why they should pay somebody to go and stay at home for 3 months and still pay them. And trust me, all employers struggle. I used to work with a law firm, and then when I said I was going on maternity leave, like, I have to pay you and then get somebody to do your work, and this is a law firm, by the way. So yes, maternity leave is one of the leaves that are painful. And we can introduce paternity leave if we want to equalize it. But I don't think employers like to add more leave to their staff benefits. But yeah, leave is a requirement of the law, both annual leave and maternity leave. And this whole thing about you earn leave as you work, I haven't seen anything in the Labor Act that says that leave has to be earned. Leave is a right. So you need to contract and say how many days the employer the employee gets. And then you work with that. And yeah, it's annoying. You can hire somebody and the first month they decide that they'll take their leave and then they go and then they say, I've stopped work. And you're like, well, I paid you to do nothing, right? Or somebody is resigning and you're like, oh, they want to take their leave, all their leave before they go. So they take a garden leave and then they leave you with no handing over. And sometimes these considerations will lead us to think, well, let's tighten the leave regime. But we need to make sure that we are within the law and that we give the leave. The rules around how we develop the rules around leave is a matter of contract between us, the employees, but we need to give leave. It's not optional. Tax and financial compliance. We won't go too deep into tax matters, but just an overview of the compliance requirements around tax. We need to make sure we maintain accurate records on our sales expenses, and that's also some of the things that sometimes there's a lot of mingling your personal expenses with your company expenses. We need to be really disciplined about that, because GRA, if they ever choose you to do an audit, I've been through that, I tell you, Nola, that's the most painful thing after childbirth. Is the most painful thing ever. They will go through your expenses and try and force you to accept that a certain expense wasn't only for the business, even though you know it was for the business. They will they'll convince you that so long as you use small parts to enjoy yourself, it's not for the business. But if you keep accurate records, receipts, and the receipts are clearly labeled in the name of the company, then when you have these issues, you are able to get yourself out of it. But we need to discipline ourselves also in the way we do this. And we're all guilty. I have a small business, and sometimes I do that. Sometimes I'll buy water, stuff, toilet roll, stuff for the week, and I don't even bother to take a receipt, or I don't. But every time I do that, I don't charge the business for it. Because as so long as I'm going to charge that money to the business, I need to make sure that I have the paperwork. Otherwise, you have to bear that expense. But if you do it a couple of times, you will realize that you need to discipline yourself and make sure. That is when we buy from these small vendors. It's a difficult one because GRA said, why didn't you take VAT? I was like, look at this small shop that I buy stationery. And they don't care. And some of them, you don't even get receipts. So there are all these nuances, but overall, let's try and make this tidy up our expenses so that we don't commingle or mix up our company expenses. And then track VAT invoices and receipts. If we are registered for VAT, please. Because VAT is technically not the company's money. It's money that you are collecting on behalf of governments. And that's why when the GRA come and they are fighting you over VAT, they literally lock up your business, because it's like you've taken government money and you've stopped it. So we should try not to mingle, to put them all together. VAT is for government. We set that aside and we file it. And then deduct allowable expenses. Exactly. So we talked about expense recording. Allowable expenses are expenses that the tax man will allow you to deduct from your revenue. And now if you are not able to deduct expenses from your revenue, what it is that you are paying tax, which is a percentage of profits on your revenue. So the expenses are important to reduce your taxable income. And that's why you have to have accurate. If GRA says we are not allowing you a particular expense, it automatically shoots up your taxable income, which means that you are paying more tax on money that you spent on the business that should have been taken out. And it's allowable because they can say they won't allow it. So we should try and make sure that it is allowable by having the paperwork in place for it. And then also avoiding late filings and penalties. We have to keep an eye on it. And a lot of businesses say, oh, my accountant deals with it. But when it comes to these things, you need to sometimes make sure that they do what they need to do at the right time. 15th of the month, you file. It's not, they don't get to. And now the penalties are accruing, it's automatically adding up. And so you need to make sure that even for outsourced accounting, you need to make sure that you check them and they file on time. And sometimes it's also you making sure that the money is available for them to file on time so that you don't incur penalties. So we've spoken about all these, maintaining proper accounts, filing our returns, both tax returns, that's the monthly returns for VAT, withholding tax, PAYE, and then also CIT at the end of the year. Well, it's usually the first quarter of the next year. Keeping our receipts and invoices, and then getting bookkeeping help. And there are a few apps, software that we can get that may be cheaper than getting a bookkeeper if we have a small business. It's QuickBooks, you get a subscription, you input all your invoices. It will help you to at least tidy up your finances. I mean, gone are the days when we use Excel to track expenses and revenue. We need to move forward a bit so that if we are not going to hire an accountant. Yeah. So the tax regime for SMEs is GRA administers all tax. They'll give you a tin when you register. Even if it's a sole proprietor, you will still get a tin. And then the taxes that you need to pay is the income tax, which is the corporate income tax at the end of the year. There is also personal income tax, and the law requires that even if you're an employee but you make other income, you need to file your personal income tax returns at the end of the year, where you declare income that is outside of your employment, that is not within the PAYE. But what that also helps you is you can get tax relief. So you can get tax relief if you have dependents, your parents or children. And so if you do the PIT, you're able to offset some of your tax liability with the reliefs as well. And then there's VAT, the business, if your business sells goods and services and you are above the threshold, I think it's 250,000 a year, then you register for VAT and you charge VAT. The VAT is, as I said, it's not part of it's not your money. So if your price is 50 cedis and VAT goes on it, you still get your 50 cedis. But then the VAT on top of it is what goes to government, and you're only custodian of government money when it comes to VAT. Withholding tax. Now there's withholding tax when you're procuring services, you need to take out withholding tax. And then when you are providing a service as well, the recipient of the service will withhold tax. Now withholding tax is not a tax that you can add on and pay it yourself. Because it's a withholding, which means that it's withheld at source. So you can't say, don't take out withholding tax, add it to my money, and then I would file it myself. The good thing about withholding tax is that it gives you a credit. So at the end of now, even with the platform, it automatically credits you at the end of the year with all your withholding. So every time somebody withholds a tax and they input it in the GRE system, at the end of the year, when your taxable income, your tax liability is computed, they'll take out all your withholding tax that's been paid, because it's a prepayment on your tax. So for businesses like services, you end up having almost all your tax liability being offset with withholding taxes, because that's the main tax that you're being charged with, especially if you don't have other income that is taxable. And then PAYE, which is the one that you take from the employee's salary, and you remit that to GRE as well. So you need to file the returns, please, that's important. It's not about, the deduction is one thing, but filing the returns is actually more important. That's the only way. And if you don't file, they'll charge you penalty. There was ones that I sent them to go and file, was it VAT returns? When they got it was the last day, and there was a queue. And so the person, I think I sent my driver or something. I just started the business, so I was doing my own returns, and I'll send the driver. When he got there was such a queue. He needed to pick up my kids from school at 2 o'clock. And so I told him he should leave and pick up the kids. The next time I went, they were charging me penalty. The way it didn't pain me, I was so tired because I had done everything right. But the timing, I just got the timing too tight. So let's keep an eye on it. 15th of the month, please, of the next month, so that we avoid penalties. And then the annual CIT filings, which is due by March 30th. That you can get an extension for it. But then we should keep an eye on it and make sure that our accounts are ready to be filed. The e-portal, I talked about the e-tax portal that GRA is using now to facilitate these filings. I don't know how to use it, please. My accountants, now my business has grown small, so I have accountants. They are the ones that they use it, but they told me that it's pretty good to do your filings. So yeah, we can look at that as well. Common tax mistakes. I think we've been talking about it as we're going along. So we know all this failure to file returns on time, then separating business and personal income, and then poor bookkeeping and missing receipts. Because if the receipt is not there, they won't allow you to collect. It will not be an allowable expense. So now I've learned to keep a receipt for everything. It is annoying. But then, when they start doing that, the tax audit, that's when you see that every little money that counts in collecting the receipt. And then paying staff off the books. Please, let's not do that. Because most times it's the staff that will snitch. If you annoy them, they'll go and snitch on you. So let's not try to say we're paying them off the books. So no, we'll just declare. The day they realize that the amount that you are paying them off the books affects their SNIT, and when they are retiring, they'll be getting less pension. That's the day that they'll start saying. A lot of the SNIT investigations are because employees that are not happy go and snitch on their employer. So that tax is not even our money. So we shouldn't be negotiating with them. It's only the SNIT that we have to top up a bit. But the PAY is from their own money that they are paying, you're deducting for government. So let's not make deals with this staff, PAYE and SNIT. Data protection. That it was also, a few years ago, I think data protection was like 2012 and then they didn't really establish properly, and now they are really, really, really chasing. So data protection is generally when you are collecting data, that's the regulatory aspect of it. When you're collecting data, you need to make sure, if you're collecting data from people, you need to make sure that you're registered with DPC. But overall, legally, data protection is protecting your data and the data of people that deal with you. So I would say we should look at signing NDAs, and now you can get NDAs off of the internet. You don't even need to hire a lawyer. But the benefit of an NDA is to protect the information that you share with other people. I heard recently that one of the big banks, it's gone down now, one of the big banks was actually born out of a business plan that the promoter shared with the regulator. It wasn't official. They went to the regulator, and the person was actually the head of the regulator. And they shared their business plan and said, I'm thinking of this. Do you think I can get a license for it? And say, oh, no, this business is not good. You can get a license. A few years after, same name, same colors, everything. The regulator went out of government and then decided to set it up as a private business. So let's ensure that our data is protected, our processes, our ideas are protected, and then also securing our proprietary information and our intellectual property. We can do that through contract. If we have brands or trademarks, it takes a long time, but let's start the process for protecting our business interests and our name especially. So as part of data protection, we must deal with the regulatory aspect. That's register with the data protection, under the Data Protection Act, with the Data Protection Commission. It's not that, you just fill some forms taken. I think every 2 years you renew. But what it does, it gives you the credibility, because then as you collect more data, people will trust that because you are registered with it, you are responsible. You are a responsible data, what do they call it, data handler or data collector, something like that, yeah. And then also make sure your data is secure, both electronically and also your physical data in your files. And then you should also make sure you have access controls when it comes, especially when it comes to employees and they're leaving and they're taking your information and your business ideas and your processes out. That's one of the main ways that businesses lose value, because their ideas get siphoned away. So let's look at putting that. Also making sure that as our information is backed up, so that we can, when we lose, when our servers crash, we can still go ahead and work. So let's look at, under data protection, I think these are the things that we should need to look at. Okay, common compliance pitfalls. And this we see, sometimes businesses just don't stop to look, to review their documents. So you see that you look in their business books and they have expired licenses, especially when it is FDA and GSA. It is very, very perilous, because if they ever withdraw your product or your product license, the effect on your company's reputation and on the business, it can be irreparable. Ghanaians never forget. So isn't it that business that they said that the FDA has seized their? So please, let's look at our licenses. If we have foreign investors, we'll likely register with GIPC. That's renewable every 2 years. Data protection is renewable every 2 years as well. So let's look at renewal. It's not just about getting the license, but let's look at the date of expiration of the license and make sure that we have all our licenses in place. And then also having no contracts. Operating with gentleman's agreements doesn't work. It doesn't work because there is no integrity most times there's no integrity in business. So let's not count on a handshake securing business, especially when there's money involved. Let's make sure that we have contracts. It doesn't have to be a 30-page contract drafted by a lawyer that's charging you 2,000 cedis an hour. Even the most basic of contracts is acceptable by law. Just a recording of the commercial terms is fine. It's enforceable. So let's not see contracts as at the expense of going to see a lawyer to draft it. A simple contract that just states what everybody's responsibility is, how much is being paid, when it's going to be paid. And those matters that will bring disputes is what I'm talking about. Just something simple, put together something. Now you can even use AI to help you to put together a contract. So please, the lawyers will kill me that I'm spoiling their business. But for small businesses, I totally understand how you will not be able to afford to go and get a lawyer to draft a contract. And then sometimes they'll give you a 30-page contract that takes forever, and all you need is just to capture the terms. So please, let's have the most basic contract is better than no contract at all. And then also we've talked several times about the returns, tax net returns, and then also mixing finances. For small businesses and businesses that are owner managed, that is one of the biggest pitfalls. We talked about financing expenses from our personal funds, but also using the business's money for our personal expenses. That is a no. When any potential investor finds out, it just suggests that you are indisciplined and nobody wants to deal with them. And when they put money in, what shows that you will not be using that money to go on a trip with your friends. So please, let's separate business money from company money. All right. If we're going to strengthen the foundations of our compliance, we need to put in place So we need to be intentional about it. Compliance will not happen by itself. And as I said in the beginning, it can be a pain in the ass. But we need to continually make sure that we are reviewing our compliance. It's like going to the doctor once a year to make sure that all your organs are functioning right. So it's a health check for your business. Get professional support if you can afford it. There's a lot of professional support that doesn't have to come and break the bank. So you can get professional support. And sometimes it's just really doing a bit of research online, and you find a few things that can guide you at least until you can afford proper professional support. And then attend as many training sessions as are available so that you can broaden your knowledge on how businesses run. Like these programs that are, and a lot of them are funded by potential investors. So they're telling you what they want to see in a business that is healthy. So we should take advantage of these sessions and grow our knowledge and our skills. And then also let's instill a governance culture. I always say governance it's a culture that and it can affect everybody in the business. If the business leaders have a good corporate governance structure, it will infuse all the way down, and everybody will be aware of governance and sensitive to governance. So, and the culture of governance means that it's not only when the regulator is looking at you, or only when you are looking for potential investment. Because governance has to follow your business. And sometimes you run the business for 5 years, in the 5th year you decide to get, in the 5th year you decide to get, can you hear me? No. You decide to get investment, and you realize you can't go back 5 years to correct some of the things you've done. And it can be very embarrassing, because it's like, oh, I didn't know I was going to get investment, so I didn't do this. That doesn't sound right. So from the start, let's put in ourselves the discipline and the culture of governance so that our business will thrive. And we talked about the foundational principles of governance. Oh, I forgot the part. Wait. Seek legal advice early. So please, can you see the lawyers so that we too will get small business. We are small businesses. Seek legal. Let's not wait most times to get advice. As I said, sometimes doing research online can give you a little idea about a topic. And so let's not wait. Let's anticipate problems and let's deal with them early enough. But then again, if you wait for the problem to happen to when you come, the lawyers, they'll charge you more. So please, let's mitigate a lot of our legal risks by doing these things that we have spoken about previously. But more importantly, let's be a little bit more aware of our legal rights and responsibilities.